I want to compliment the club and Seth for making this possible, because when I got the phone call from Ray Thomason, Ray, would you please stand up? Ray Thomason, a good friend who has spoken to the club here first on global warming or cooling, whichever you want to believe, and also on Saudi Arabia gas and the level of gas reserves in the West, and are very close to that in Saudi Arabia as well. That Ray said, John Hofmeister is going to be in town. I said, wonderful, we'll get him to the Rotary Club. Well, we had to make a breakfast meeting, and that was wonderful that we could do that. So thank you to the entire Rotary Club for allowing John to speak. He's been on a very tight schedule. I guess he's going to be off the dime here on December 16th, I think it is. But prior to that, he's up and down the roads and around the country. John is, as you may see by the bio that was in the Keyway, a retired president of Shell Oil Company out of Houston. That's the U.S. company. And he has taken a new avocation. It isn't really a job, it's just something that he has to do all the time. And he's going to speak today on delivering energy security in an anti-hydrocarbon environment. And I think we all know that in the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of hostility in that environment. And John is working hard to educate many of us all the way across the country as to the pitfalls of energy control by the government and the opportunities that are available for energy resource development. And frankly, within the last couple of days, we've had a Colorado Oil and Gas Association meeting right across the street at the Convention Center, and it's been obvious that one way out of the financial pitfalls is to start developing all our natural resources. That's real money. But John, I'd like to have you introduce you, and if you would come up to the podium and tell us what you've been doing and what you're going to do next.
Thank you, Dean, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And let me just pick it up where Dean left off. I testified in Congress this past winter in the House Energy and Commerce Committee's Subcommittee on Energy and Power. And the issue at hand in the subcommittee's hearing was why are crude oil prices spiking and what can we expect going forward? And this, as you recall, was during the height of the so-called Arab Spring, in which the Libyan production was pretty well offline, and that had an impact on global crude oil prices. And having been out there dealing with this issue for some time, in fact, during my tenure, the latter part of my tenure as Shell's president, we saw the crude oil price spike to $147 a barrel, and I testified in Congress about 6 times in 18 months. And that was during the 110th Congress. The 111th Congress came in, as you know, in 2009, after the 2008 elections. And with a supermajority of Democrats in the House and a supermajority of Democrats in the Senate and a Democrat in the White House, the 111th Congress, having just seen the highest crude oil prices in history, passed not one single energy bill during the entirety of the 111th Congress. And so the House Republicans were attempting to get this dime moving again this past winter. And in my testimony, I said something very simple. I've learned from experience to keep it as simple as possible in such testimony, or they'll fry you one way or another. And so the simple concept I was trying to articulate in the face of rising crude oil prices is let's take a look back at history. Let's take a look back at domestic energy production history in the United States of America and see if there might be a lesson to draw from that history. And in point of fact, I said, if the United States government were to set a target or a goal or an objective or have some kind of an idea about what we could do in the future, we could simply go back where we used to be in domestic crude oil production, and we could increase domestic production of crude oil by 3 million barrels a day to bring it back to the 10 million barrels a day we used to produce in the 1970s and the 1980s. Because I testify that we live in a country that has more oil than it will ever need, all things considered. If we look at all of the reservoirs, all of the resources, all of the potential crude oil production, and we won't forever be reliant on oil because technology will move us on. But we are in a hydrocarbon age, and anyone who says we are not, or that we are post-hydrocarbon, has not read a newspaper or listened to the reports of the industry, or listened to the growth stories in China and India and the rest of the developing world in a very long time. Because the demand for oil continues to grow. And to suggest that we are in a post-hydrocarbon world while the demand is growing and the price is rising because we're not producing enough oil is simply in denial. I'm being polite. So I testified 3 million barrels a day, which could be achieved over about a 10-year period, not overnight, would have 3 beneficial consequences on the United States of America. 1, it would reduce foreign imports by 3 million barrels a day. While we're sitting here paying our disposable income to purchase crude oil so that we can build out Dubai, so that we can build up Riyadh, so that we can restore Iraq, so that we can build Abu Dhabi and Bahrain, we're watching Cleveland and Detroit and Philadelphia and Baltimore and other major metropolitan centers in this country fade into the economic dustbin of history. While the new construction that we're paying for, by the way, is lifting the tide that's lifting all ships in oil-producing regions of the world. So we could reduce foreign imports by 3 million barrels a day. The uplift in job creation would produce 3 million new American jobs, I testified. 3 million new American jobs. Not just drilling workers, not just people on the rigs, but all of the people behind the scenes that make the steel, that make the pipe, that make the parts, that make the pumps, that make the valves, that make everything that is necessary to go into that level of production increase. And those jobs are in places like Chicago and Detroit and Cleveland and Buffalo, where metal manufacturers machine parts with high technology equipment. And they're good paying jobs. And the consequence, the third aspect of it, the consequence of 3 million new barrels and the royalties associated would bring about $30 billion new a year to the United States Treasury at a time when the United States Treasury could use a little help on the tax side. And 3 million workers now working in high-paid jobs paying taxes, and they would be paying local taxes and state taxes and federal taxes. Wouldn't that be something for the economy? If we would decide something like that. Well, to the credit of Fred Upton, the chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee,